present to you the Ninja Medic. So the idea is you basically want to play like the normal dagger pistol playstyle, but instead of going for like I just kill things, you want to also focus a little bit on preventing the enemy from killing your allies. So you're going to see a lot of familiar traits and stuff, but I'll describe to you how the playstyle changes as well in the future. So Thrill of the Crime, this is a AoE boon sharing of Fury, Swiftness, and Might, so obviously that's going to be the least selfless, or the least selfish trait. You have Bountiful Theft, which gives Vigor to your allies in a 240 radius, and whatever boons you steal will also be given to them. So for example, if you say like, how do I explain this? So Thrill of the Crime happens at the location of your original steal. So if I steal from here, I give boons to this guy right here, right? I will give this guy boons. See how he's got the boons from Thrill? But he didn't get the Vigor because he's not in range of the target. So basically what that means is Bountiful Theft shares the boons after you land steal, whereas Thrill of the Crime gives them before you land steal, which also means that you have to land steal to give out Bountiful Theft. So yeah, usually you just want to be in melee range, in other words, to give out the most boons to your allies, and they want to be on top of your target, which is pretty nice for the playstyle, right? If you're focusing a target, you're going to be on the same target as someone else. So that helps out a lot there. Sleight of Hand, this is the same as it always is, but usually you don't need to use your steal to do damage as much with this build because you don't do as much damage. So what I do is I just save steal for the utility purposes, like stealing boons, giving boons to my allies, or making plays. So that's really nice because you're going to have your steal up more often because you don't need to stay on the target as often as like a normal DPS thief would be. So you can save the steal to make plays, which is nice. And you can do a lot of different stuff with this, which I'll show later. So in Shadow Arts, normally I would take Shadow's Embrace and Leeching Venoms. But I take the less selfish traits of Merciful Ambush and Shadow Savior. Now, these actually scale pretty well with healing power, these two traits, but I don't take any healing power because the amount of scaling that they do, while it is very good, I'm not actually using these traits to heal very often, and I'm actually doing more damage much more often. So having scaling on my damage gives me more value than scaling on my healing, because if I'm only healing like 20% of the time and doing damage 80% of the time, then it's better that I just stat into damage. So that's why I go Marauders still. However, you could go for like a Minstrel's set. It would just feel kind of useless a lot of the time because you're not always going for a res, and it's not always really possible to heal people. You can heal people still without having healing power with Shadow Savior. So you don't really need healing power to do that. But as I was saying, Merciful Ambush gives you healing every second in stealth. So it's kind of like Shadow's Rejuvenation, but a little bit weaker. But you can also give it to your allies. So it's less selfish. And it also gives you revive ticks every second that the ally you stealth is in stealth. So it's really good at just rezzing people, and it also stealths them whenever you press F on them. So it gives them ticks every time, and then anything else that you give them stealth with, like any of your utilities or combos, it'll give them additional on top of that. So you can basically make a lot of plays because of this trait, because there are so many options that allow you to make a play to get the res. Like, it's not like, oh, I go for the res, and if they reveal it, then it's over. No, you have many different ways that you can go for it because of this trait, and that's just really nice. Next we have Shadow Savior. Shadow Stepping gives a heal to yourself and to your allies at the location that you Shadow Step to. So if I am over here, I Shadow Step here. Anyone who's 360 radius within that target gets a healing. And that's pretty wide. Very wide, actually. It's wider than this because this is a 240 radius. So yeah, in team fights you can often give out decent healing. It's not amazing, but it's pretty decent. Shadow Siphoning, you're not really backstabbing too often, but it adds up. Cloaked in Shadow. This is a really good trait for this type of build as well, because you're not really speccing too much into damage so much, so you often get a lot of value from the life stealing because it only scales with power. You'll often go into a team fight and put your black powder down, and because the radius has been increased, you can often get quite a bit of healing, but also you're just blinding the enemy, which is insanely good for team fights because you're preventing your team from getting damaged. There's also this thing where whenever you get stealth, you blind nearby foes. So that's really good because oftentimes Heartseeker combos are very clunky. So like at the end of my Heartseeker, there's like an aftercast that's kind of vulnerable, but when you use that, you'll blind at the end of it. So it often blinds people at the end of that animation, which kind of covers the animation and makes it a lot safer. And just in general, having an extra blind when you do like your BP into Heartseeker combo, it just adds more damage. So it's like you do blind here that does like 400 damage, and then I do the Heartseeker that does another 200 plus the Heartseeker damage. Like it adds up over time. So yeah, this is a pretty good trait. Next is Daredevil. You could go like Deadeye or Acro, but those are more selfish. Daredevil's pretty selfish too, but because you have more mobility in Daredevil, it actually ends up being better. I think Daredevil is just one of the more powerful trait lines in this patch anyways. So basically, you have Dash, and with Dash you remove a lot of condies from yourself because you're not using Shadow's Embrace. You lack a lot of Condi Cleanse, so you remove a lot of like cripples and stuff, and then with Escapist Fortitude, whenever you remove those cripples, you also evade an attack usually, which cleanses another Condi. So you'll usually cleanse quite a bit of Condis just from Daredevil trait line. So that's really good. And just having mobility allows you to get to where you need to be to make your plays. Like if someone dies over there, you need to get to them as soon as possible. You dash over there and get the res. As far as Havoc Specialist, you're not really... There's nothing else that you can really take here. Pulmonary is just worse because it only scales off of interrupts, whereas Havoc scales off of everything. So yeah, there's that. And then Weakening Strike. Whenever you dodge, you will weaken people, which is really good because say you'll do like a dodge and then you'll go in with a Shadow Shot, and then you weaken and blind the enemy, and you're just preventing them from doing damage. So that's just a really good support for your team. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the traits. Now the utilities, I take Channeled Vigor. You can take Withdraw, but Channeled Vigor is just better for the playstyle because it separates your heal from your dodges. So you get to choose when to use your heal independent of when you want to use your dodges. So you're not forced to heal and dodge at the same time with Withdraw. And that means that you have more mobility for when you need it, which is important because mobility is key. Also, Shadow Step is pretty standard on every build. It's the best utility skill. It'll also heal wherever you port to. So port there and port back, it'll give you a heal. Blinding Powder. This is just really important for making plays. So you put down the black powder and then you blinding powder, and then you have a really quick and long stealth. You can do a lot of plays with Elementalists. So like if an Ellie goes down, you can go up to the Ellie and do the quick blinding powder, black powder combo. And then what you can do is tell them to mist, and then they miss somewhere else. By the time they miss, though, they'll be out of stealth, right? But they'll be repositioned. You can start rezzing them, and with this trait, that'll stealth them for another 3 seconds, and you can pretty much get the stealth for free there, because no one's going to be able to cleave that. So that's a really strong play there. It's also just a stun break, so just really good. Shadow Refuge is making a return because it has a healing component on it, which sort of is nice in team fights to heal your allies for like 2k, but mostly it's just for rezzing people because it also rezzes the downstate body in conjunction with Merciful Ambush, which would give a 1% revive per second. So that's really nice. And yeah, there's just a lot of play around Shadow Refuge. So it's like, what people don't know is that if you leave the refuge, you get revealed. So there's a lot of counterplay to refuge, right? So a lot of times people will cleave on top of the refuge and you get revealed or something like that. So you have to know how the counterplays work. And there's also a lot of like jukes that you can do. So for example, like say I'm in stealth here and I'm stacking stealth, and then say I put down a refuge over here. Now I'm in stealth still, and then the refuge is over there, and then I don't need to go into that refuge. I can go elsewhere. And the enemy will perhaps think that I'm in the refuge because, I mean, why wouldn't I be in the refuge? And they know that if I leave the refuge, then I'll be revealed. So they assume that I'm going to be in that refuge until it ends. Otherwise, I'd be revealed. But if I never enter into the refuge, then I'll never get revealed by leaving it. So you can basically bait people into overcommitting to the location of your refuge and just leaving. And yeah, you can really juke people like that. You can do plays where you refuge a down body on your ally, and teams will like over cleave it because they think that you're rezzing, but in actuality you don't have enough res for that anyways. So you're just going to leave and they'll over cleave that, and that'll get your ally to revive sooner because they'll respawn sooner. And yeah, you can just do a lot of mind games with refuge. It takes a lot of play to use it optimally. Next, I don't use Thieves Guild. I was just using that to see if I could show you guys how Bountiful Theft worked. I'm using Basilisk Venom. That's just really good for supporting your team. When you share Bassy Venom, you give stuns to your teams. What you want to do with that is, say I give Bassy to this guy, and then he hits the target and stuns them. Then I'll stow, wait for the stun to wear off, and then I'll stun them. And we can get like chain stuns, and that really helps you to focus targets. So yeah, that's really good. You can use Dagger Storm in World vs. World. So there's that. Pretty much you just need more survivability in World vs. World because there's more situations where you'll be outnumbered. For the stats, I take full Marauders in both World v World and PvP. And I take Draining Sigil and Absorption Sigil in World v World, and Mercy Runes in World v World because you just want more rezzing potential. And in PvP, I take Marauders with Leadership because Leadership is really good with Bassy Venom and you don't have Mercy Runes. And I take Absorption there as well, and Revocation. You just want as much Boon Rip as possible. But the thing is, the Draining Sigil is really nice with the interrupts because it's lifesteal. But also, Sigil of Absorption gives you a 3 boon steal when interrupting a foe. So in conjunction with your steal, if your steal interrupts, it would steal 5 boons. So that's just really good. And then obviously energy cleansing on bow. You can use Minstrels, or you can use like a Marauder Zealots mix if you really want to be healing your allies more. But as I said earlier, you're not really healing that often. You're more just making res plays while also being a thief. So yeah, and in PvP you could also run Menders as well if you really want to focus on supporting allies. But as I said, you'll be doing a lot less damage. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the playstyle of this build is similar to Dagger Pistol, normal, DP, but not only do you try to focus targets with your team, but you also try to prevent kills from the other team. So there's a little bit more complexity to it, in my opinion. But at the start, I'm going to give out Bassy Venom to my team and try to focus a target with them. I get blinded and revealed, so I try to wait for my blind to come off to preserve my Bassy, but my Bassy runs out still. So now I'm going to go in for the focus target. I steal all of their boons and try to focus them, but my team isn't really chasing the kill, so I decide to go back and support my ranger on the terrain here and give Bassy and try to focus this target down that was focusing my backline in a way. But I see that my team is still trying to focus the enemy scrapper because they're now on node, and I do a bit of healing to my team there with a little bit of shadow stepping, and now at this point the Guardian has shown to be off and easily targeted. I put a Shadow Refuge down, but I know that I will get my stomp interrupted by the Guardian's knockback ability. So I do a Shadow Sip Stomp, and now we're ahead because we've got a kill, and I see that my Necromancer is low, so I try to give out Bassy to them to clear Condis, and we do manage to get a Necro kill here. Their Revenant is also low, and I'll just train that down here. I can interrupt and steal boons here, or I can just put down unblockable blinds so they can't really react. Their Scrapper comes back into the fight, and what I want to do here is focus the kill if I can with my steal, and then immediately rotate out if I can't get anything done. So I miss steal, and at this point the kill doesn't look to be in sight too soon. So we swap targets to their Necro, and I'm giving out a little bit of healing with my shadow shots, and I give out the Bassy Venom. We're back on the Engineer, and we're 3v2ing, so I try to stay on the kill, but my team doesn't really chase that well, so I should port back here and go for the Necro. But instead, I see that Far is actually a really good +1 because it's a pretty low Core Guardian, and I can just spam Heartseeker to finish off this kill. So I do that. I also give Refuge to my Druid because I want to heal them a little bit. So that's pretty nice. And they give me some really nice damage, so I can get this Stomp with Blind. However, their Scrapper reses it very quickly right before I can get it, and I didn't have my steal up to prevent that. So we need to go for this kill again in this 2v2. We stay on the Core Guardian, obviously, and I go in for a backstab into some follow-up Heartseekers. I get the down, but I can't really go for the Stomp yet because I don't have enough initiative. I go for the Stomp with Blinding Powder, and then I steal to the NG so that they can't res. And now we're in a 2v1. In this 2v1, I want to decide whether I stay or leave. We currently don't own the node, so I definitely want to stay, at least until the decap. But we've also got the NG pretty low, which means Heartseeker is going to give me really big value. So I land a nice 3 to 4k Heartseeker there, because they were below 25% HP. It doesn't matter that I'm running Menders. I can still do decent damage. So I go to mid after getting that kill, and this is a 1v2 with my Necro against a Core Guardian and a Condi Rev. They're going to swap to me a little bit, but my Necro goes in Lich, so I use a bunch of shadow shots here to heal my Lich so they can stay and do damage, and I give out Refuge as well so that I can go for the Stomp. And now we're in a 3v1. I have my steal, and I wanted to give that out before I rotate out. So I do the steal. I actually don't do the steal. I save the steal, and then I see that there is a Scrapper coming back into mid, but I don't want to stay there because that's going to be a long kill time. I see that my Revenant is dying at home, so what I do is I go in for a stealth res play, and I steal to the person who is stomping, so just to make sure that nothing funny happens, because what happens a lot of times is you try to go for a stealth res play and your teammate will like reveal themselves because they don't know how to play around a medic thief. So Yeah, it's just nice to be able to interrupt the down or the person stomping your downed ally. You can also interrupt it with headshots, or if you're stuck in short bow, with the choking gas. So you have an interrupt on both weapon sets to prevent stomps. So that's pretty nice. You can get a lot of reses off because of that. Now we've gotten the kill, and we're in a 3v2. We just got the kill, so it's a 3v1. And I'm just going to spam Heartseeker on this Necro. A lot of times what you want to do is save your steel to interrupt the Necro's heal. But I can use Headshot for that as well, since I'm stuck in Dagger Pistol right now. So we'll just have Heartseeker spam now, and they use their heal here, but my steel was on like a 1 second cooldown, so I didn't get the interrupt on the heal, so we actually wasted a little bit of time here that we didn't need to do. I go to mid at this point, and we're outnumbered here, so we're returning to this fight a little bit late. So I try to give my team big presence by going aggressive with my Shadow Step in. I put down a black powder to peel a little bit, and then I swap to short bow just to try to finish the kill. It looks like their Revenant is really low, so I'm going for some choking gas just to prevent them from using their heal. I give refuge to my team so that they can stomp freely, and then I go to chase their Core Guardian, who is chasing my Druid along with a Weaver off node. So the Weaver gets immobilized, and I put a black powder on top of them so that they can't counter pressure, and then I go for a Heartseeker to finish them off. At this point, we're starting to come back into the match, and I want to prevent my team from dying rather than going for more kills. So I see that my team is looking at home, and I want to kind of like support my ranger from getting 1v2'd here. So what I do is I pressure this scrapper. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a 1v1 for my druid against the necro, and then when the scrapper thinks that I'm going for the decap, I go back and +1 the necro, and the scrapper is still back on the node. I get the interrupt on the necro's heal, and we secure the kill. Meanwhile, the scrapper is still trying to get into this fight because they tried to prevent me from decapping. So I made a really big play there by creating a 2v1 with my mobility. You can do that on normal Thief as well, right? But the ability to do it in general is just good. I don't necessarily get the decap here, but the fact that we're about to 2v1 this because we just killed the necro is good. We'll probably get the decap anyways because the NG will be forced to get off the node for at least a second. So yeah, I just spam Heartseekers. When I see that the NG gets protection, I use Steel, but they're going to get protection back and a ton of barrier. This is a really tanky scrapper, so this is no longer worth +1ing this. So I leave, and I see that their Necro is going to full cap us on mid, which is not really good because it's going to take us a while to kill this. As you can see, they're using Spectral Armor. So what I'm doing is I'm just stalling this node. We got the 2v1 at home, so that's good. If I had stayed there to 3v1 that, we would have lost the full cap on mid. But since I stalled it on mid, now we can get into this fight and not be on their node where they're taking and getting value off of this fight. I go to far to try to prevent that stomp, but they die too quickly, so then I go back to mid. I don't want to be 1v1ing on this build almost ever. So I get the Heartseeker spams on the down there, and then I put a refuge so that my team has a lot of detarget and just healing. It's pretty good in a cleave situation to just use refuge even if you don't want the stealth, because there's combo finishers that'll blind and stuff like that. So I go to far and try to decap, and then I'm going to immediately head to mid because I want to... Am I going to head to mid? I should head to mid right now. I might go for the full cap, but there's probably a good reason to not stay here. Yeah, like, so I don't want to 1v1 this Core Guardian, even though I can pretty much hold the decap or the full cap for quite some time because I have a lot of sustain. However, now I'm 1v2. So yeah, as you can see, I made a huge mistake trying to full cap this, and I can survive a little bit, but not quite. as long as I would need to be able to. So at this point, I'm out of cooldowns. I'm leaving and heading to mid. I did a good job stalling there, but I probably would have gotten more done and taken a lot less risk if I had just left earlier. I actually head to far again because we have mid, but yeah, I need to go back to mid. I really should go back to mid. I don't know. I wasn't rotating very well here, but at mid, I see that their Condi Rev is pretty low. I get the stun with my Bassi Venom, or no, I just get the Immobilize, and then I just try to spam Choking Gas on the down body so that no one can res that. We also get more kills here because we're kind of like snowballing, and I just prevent them from resing with Steel, and now I go back to far for the decap. At this point, yeah, they're going to 2v1 that Ellie on mid, which is on our node, so we definitely don't want to 3v1. I go for the decap. Home is also 2v1ing, I think. So that should be one eventually. I don't really need to 3v1 that. So we're just going to 3v1 mid instead. And I give out Bassi Venom, which allows us to train down this Necro. Bassi Venom is a really good +1 utility because it just kind of snowballs that. I see that Home is actually losing the 2v2. I go for a Refuge play, and my Revenant actually reveals himself, so that's kind of bad because I'm not getting the res ticks on them because of that. But I still get the res anyways because their NG doesn't have enough cleave. And I try to remove my blind here so that I can land my Steel. But yeah, the Revenant, it seems like we want to focus the Revenant, so I swap to that. I give out Bassi to my team, and then I try to chain the stun with my team. And as you can see, we get a lot of damage here. And now the Revenant is really pressured, and I save my Steel to interrupt their heal. But I don't have Steel now to interrupt the block, so the Revenant's going to survive a little bit longer. I need to interrupt the heal again, but my team isn't really focusing the target with me, so I need to use a lot of cooldowns here unnecessarily, and the NG will probably get the res because of that. So they do get the res, and I'm a little bit low on cooldowns, so I'm forced to probably Refuge here just to resustain, and we'll probably go back in for the kill on the Rev because it's still low. And yeah, I just spam short bow here. I go in for a little bit of a Heartseeker damage, and now I have Bassi, so I want to get some good damage off on this Bassi. I go for a Shadow Shot and a full auto attack chain. I interrupt the Rev with my Steel, and at this point I put down a Black Powder and just Heartseeker spam for the kill. Should be able to get this kill. And now what I do is I Black Powder for the stomp, but not quite enough still. And now I can probably go for the stomp with a Steel. Yeah, so I Steel onto the NG and do a Shadow Step Stomp. And also I get interrupted there by a random daze from the NG's leap, so that's unfortunate. We're not going to get this stomp again, so this is kind of turning out to be a really bad fight for us. So I might just leave this Necro. It looks like they're about to die though, so I'm going to go for the res. They have full Shroud, so I actually just leave, I think. Yeah, I should just leave and let them die. Yeah, it's not worth it at this point. However, we are winning mid pretty well. And yeah, so kind of like that Necro wasn't really worth it for me to fight with. So I needed to decide that earlier. It does look like my Druid, who is worth fighting with, is dying though. So I can get a res here on them. What I do is I put down the Black Powder for them, and they leap through it and get a stealth, which is really nice. And at this point, I'm going to contest the node because they almost have a full cap. And if I force my Druid to stand on the node, then it's going to be bad. I do end up giving the full cap eventually though because I want to help my Druid off node and kill this Core Guardian. So I just kind of like interrupt and spam Heartseeker. I go for the Stomp, and yeah, there's just a lot of utility that I bring to these fights in being able to stomp players because cleaving is not as good as it used to be, and while my druid does have really good cleave, I can stomp while they cleave. So playing with players that do a lot of damage is really good with this build. So in this match, I'll be showing a little bit more of how the rezzing capability of this build comes into play. So I immediately stealth opener for my team, but they just run past it, so they don't want the stealth opener, they just want to go stand on node. Likely does their team. So we get the kill on their Rev, I think because I daze them before they can cast their heal. And I go for the Shadow Step Stomp immediately. It is my job to secure kills in fights as well as prevent the enemy from securing kills. So I want to use all of my cooldowns to secure those kills because, you know, I'm not like a DPS thief. You know, kills are somewhat more difficult to come by. So I do want to secure them. Here I notice my engineer has won the 1v1 at home, but they're about to get plussed by, it looks like, a Core Guardian. So that's kind of dangerous. I want to go prevent that from happening. So I head to home, and the Mesmer is like 3 HP in downstate. I probably could have done something like just Heartseeker spam the downstate Mesmer, and that would rally. But I chose a safer play by putting Black Powder on the down Mesmer so they couldn't like put out a Phantasm and then just res my engineer. So now we're just gonna kill this this Core Guardian. I give out Bassi to my teammate, but the Renegade is coming in, and that's pretty dangerous because my engineer is gonna die again. I give him stealth, but he still dies, and I go for the Shadow Refuge res and get off right before getting interrupted by the Renegade spirits. So now that we're in this 2v2, I just want to focus the same target as my engineer, and it looks like the Engie is taking a lot of pressure, so I'm trying to play as aggressively as possible, and the Renegade swaps to me, so I kind of kite off with short bow, but my engineer goes down, so I go in for a quick res, but I get interrupted by the Renegade spirits, so I use Choking Gas to interrupt the spirits from afar so that I can go back in for the res, because the spirits take a while to start interrupting again, and then they'll just go away. So now we just need to kind of like press W and get this kill. The best way for me to do that is to just press Heartseeker and then steal to interrupt their heal. We get the kill, and I decide to cap the node. So at this point, I'm kind of like leaving the rotation in my team's hands, which is kind of good because my damage isn't that high, so my snowballing potential isn't really that high. I want to kind of like create map situations, and we've already done that. So now I can kind of like play the role of capper. Whereas when my team is like holding nodes, I don't want to be the one to hold them. So I go to bottom here, and my Revenant is fighting another Revenant. So I just +1 this. All I do is just try to chain CCs and secure these kills. I give my teammate stealth there just for a small little heal, and then I move on to get this res here. I use Shadow Refuge to get the res, and the Necro fears, which is good, to prevent him from getting stomped in case he did reveal himself. But I did have steal up in case I needed to also interrupt that. I go for the buff, and then I go to check on far to see if they really need help, but then I realize that it's already been won. So I head to mid. We're losing mid, but we have sides and top buff, so I really don't want to be here, but I'm just going to try to like damage control and prevent anyone from dying, because I do want to stall them here and prevent them from going to one of the side nodes, because I'd rather defend, or I'd rather not be defending a node by standing on it. I'd rather be attacking a node, where if we have to kite and all, we can do that, right? Whereas if we're defending a node, you can't really kite off node because you're forced to kind of defend the node. So it's nice, and obviously they could just leave and go to our node, but it's a little bit of a different situation. So we eventually don't get the kill, or we eventually die, I mean, but I do see that there's a potential kill here on this Renegade, so I'm kind of thirsting for that. I go in with my short bow because they're starting to heal up, and I realize that my Necro is going to die, so I try to precast a refuge here, And I noticed the Necro is kind of like casting things there, so I just interrupt it with Daze anyways, just in case. I want to get on this Renegade real quick, but it looks like I go... Yeah, I see that we're dying at far, so I try to prevent this from happening here. So I go for the stealth on this guy, and I notice that my other guy's going to rally, so I need to kind of like keep both of them alive at the same time and manage both of them and prevent them from rallying this Revenant. Now that they're both safe from rallying, I just go for the full res on one of them and the cleave on the Revenant to rally the other. So now we've kind of won this fight, which is kind of unfortunate for the enemy team because they had just won it, and then I came in and just turned that around. Now I'm looking for a decap on mid. We're losing our home node, but the buffs are up soon, so I do want to be looking towards getting a kill with my team here. I share Bassi to my Necro, but I get blinded, so I can't really use my Bassi too well here. So I'm just kind of like waiting. I really want to get Bassi value here, so I do wait, but my Necro has been mowed, so I go for the res in Refuge, and they do get... Yeah, they do get the stomp off, I think. Maybe I tried to I tried to clear the blind there with a headshot and then steal right after, which I got, but then I couldn't use my choking gas in time there to get the second interrupt. So my teammate died there because I wasn't quick enough. And now I'm just trying to stall the buff outnumbered, which is dangerous because I'm out of Condi Cleanse and I get taunted here. Even though I have my stun break, I'm pretty much dead because I have conditions on me. So I'm dead. You have to be careful because the build does have a lot of vulnerabilities when it's outnumbered. You want to be fighting with your team or stalling the enemy, which I was doing, but you know, dying isn't really stalling the enemy, so got to be careful there. At this point, bottom buff is an issue because I think we're outnumbered there. But we have the rest of the map, so that's pretty good. We can potentially be in a bad situation though because of the bottom buff is starting to get zerged. So what I end up doing is going bottom, trying to prevent my team from dying here while also trying to focus targets. I get the Refuge res on my Revenant, and because the enemy team doesn't really have that much sustain, I can sort of try to get a kill here. But my team is dying faster than they are, so I have to keep going for these reses. And I go for a res play there with the Daze and the stealth, but I get CC'd and I have to back off. The NG is kind of low, and I could go back on that, but it's risky because I'm low on cooldowns. So at this point, yeah, I'm just looking for a target. It looks like the NG is still the lowest, but my Revenant is really low too, so I'm trying to just peel for them a little bit and just stall this. I get the res here on my Necro, and now my Rev is about to die, so I go over to them. I'm just kind of like healing them as much as I can and peeling for them as much as I can. I get a nice stun here on their Guardian, but there's really no follow-up. They're using a lot of their cooldowns here, so this is kind of a close fight. My Rev is dead again. I'm going in for the res at the very end of the stomp, but I see that they have a lot of cleave. They have I think that's a burn Guardian, so I had 11 stacks there that I just cleansed with my weapon swap, so that's not going to be saved. But I can save my Necro, potentially, and I just need to stall this buff, as I said. I actually didn't prevent the cap with that, so I need to go back in, and I actually can't save my Necro, unfortunately. So now I think I'm stuck here with my Engineer or something over there. He's kind of getting chased 1v2 while I stall the NG on the buff. I just need to survive, basically. So even if my teammates die, which I don't want them to die, I need to survive myself just so that we can win on the rest of the map at this point. So yeah, I've done a pretty good job of stalling, but I get pulled here and I'm forced to Refuge. I just run around in circles in the Refuge, so it's just hard for them to predict where I can be. And I land a steal in stealth here, So since I'm not using Mug, I can actually interrupt that without revealing, which is pretty nice. And I just need to stay in stealth and not really do too much here. Just use shortbow maybe to interrupt those spirits so they don't kill my teammate too fast. But otherwise, we're just stalling here, and eventually we will win because we have the trip cap. So this is nice, just surviving outnumbered here because of my ability to kind of like troll people and res. So you saw how I could res, you saw how I could damage the game earlier. The build is somewhat okay. So yeah, if you like this build and you like playing a different style of thief, like the video. Also subscribe if you want more videos like this. And leave a comment down below describing how you'll fit this into your new ninja roleplay